Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's starting with the woots. Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
And now, Move the Sticks with Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Move the Sticks. DJ Bucky back with you. Buck, what's up, man?
Man, it's all good. Getting ready for the final weekend of the preseason, week 3. I'm really excited to see how some teams are going to approach this final weekend, DJ, because I can't determine if people are going to take it off or if some people are going to use it as a launching point to get their guys ready to play in a couple of weeks. It's fascinating to me to see the different approaches.
Yeah, I'm curious because this is the first year we go from 4 preseason games to 3 preseason games. It's the first year we go from 16 regular season games to 17 regular season games. So you hear wildly different approaches. It sounds like Bruce Arians is going to let those guys go. I mean, they're going to get out there and play with their guys for a half. So, we'll see how other teams decide to handle that. And I'm curious with all these 5 rookie quarterbacks. I mean, to me, I think if you're a team like San Francisco, you know where Jimmy is and you know what Jimmy is. So this would be a great opportunity to give Trey Lance, 3 quarters of football, if not more. I mean, I'd be tempted, to be honest with you, Buck, if I'm one of those teams, if you're the Bears, if you're the 49ers, to let those guys play the entire game. Just let it get the sense of going through a 4-quarter football game.
I'll relate to my personal experience. My 98, my last year in Kansas City, as one of the backups, Coach Schottenheimer said, hey, week 4 is for everybody else. Starters are down. Everybody else get ready to play. And I would tell you, DJ, playing that game was probably one of the highlights of my career because it was like a time where you are locked in. And when you talk about being a fringe guy, a bubble guy, trying to figure out if you can make it or not, it is almost, in essence, your Super Bowl. And having played in playoff games and those things, I can tell you that the intensity for all of the others was at that level. And so when you think about a young quarterback, Trey Lance or Justin Fields or Mac Jones playing in that kind of environment, on the outside, we can dismiss it and say, oh, it's just a bunch of backups. But let me tell you, that game will give those guys as close to a regular season feel as you can get in the preseason because everyone has the same level of urgency. Is play well or go home. And so I would absolutely play Trey Lance and those guys in that game because I want them to get used to the speed because, as you know, the speed changes when you get into the regular season. Like what we're seeing in the preseason is nice, but when they kick off for real in September, it is at a completely different speed, and you want to try and prepare those guys for that increased urgency and intensity that they'll face.
And I just think it's different, too, even from practice to getting on the game field, even if backups are out there. I always found it, you can hear some reports, and I think we've seen that with the Jets, right? Some reports of Zach Wilson really struggling in practice, and all of a sudden we see him in these preseason games. You're like, what the heck, man? This he's dealing. It looks easy. I always found as a quarterback, I wasn't 6'5". Zach Wilson's not 6'5". So when you get in kind of a practice setting where people are going, even when they're going hard, it's still 3/4 game speed. People aren't going to the ground, and it's just kind of like a mush. There's a wall in front of you. Nothing's defined. The windows don't clear up. And then all of a sudden you get in a game setting where everything's live. The pass rush is coming. It creates these lanes. You can climb up and step up. You can see clearly. To me, I found it just throwing the football wise, I preferred the game stuff versus what you did in practice.
The other stuff is this, and this is why I think we need to be careful about going too crazy about the reports that come out about practice. If practice is designed the right way, you're supposed to struggle and have mistakes. Yeah. It's not a thing that is scripted for you always to have success. And so for Zach Wilson, playing against the same defense for the entire spring or whatever, they do have a bit of a feel for his tendencies and what he likes. If cornerbacks and secondary members aren't jumping certain routes or aren't doing certain things, then to me, there's a problem because they haven't paid enough attention to how Zach Wilson wants to play the game. I worry less about those reports and worry more about how they perform in the preseason because those are games, and those games are unscripted. And Zach Wilson, by all accounts, has been very, very solid during the games. I'm more likely to lean on that than the reports of, hey, he didn't perform well in a 7-on-7 period or whatever, because no matter what we say, you still don't know what the intent of the practice script was for the coaches and for the players.
Yeah, I want to hit on some more on that in just a second. I do want to let everybody know what we've got coming up. A couple interesting quarterback decisions that were made or that will be made going forward. We're going to hit on those, as well as a fascinating trade that just took place within the last week. So we hit on that as well. But I want to continue on this topic, Buck, because I'm reading this book called Effortless by Greg McCown. And basically it talks about being able to take things, that you do, your assignments, work, whatever, and go from making things making things easier, then easy, and then effortless. Like the goal is to get to where it's effortless. And one of the chapters I was just listening to the other day, I've kind of listened to this audio book, and it talked about how when he would get a test, like he went back to school, this guy, so he's taking like classes. And he said, I wanted to do the practice test as fast as I could, because say there's 100 questions and I get half of them wrong, I can already eliminate the half I got right, and I don't need to work on those. Now I know right away, these are the 50 things I need to study. These are the 50 things I need to know. So then I just hone in, work on those things, take it again. Now I only have 30 things I need to study. Then keep going. Now I only have 10. So it's like you need to get to your mistakes as fast as you can, because then you can learn from your mistakes, which feeds right into why I think we've both been singing the same song on like Justin Fields. If you can get him out in the field, let him get out there and make these mistakes now so he can start learning from these mistakes.
Yeah, I think some people would call it fail fast. You hear business leaders talk about it right away. Fail fast so you can learn and recover and grow. Because really the growth comes from the failures. That's why when you work out hard. You put a ton of weight on, it's negative, and then your body grows as it adjusts to dealing with more weight and more conditions or obstacles that are placed before it. It's the same thing. I like what you said. So repeat it to me, those three things. So it goes from
you want to make it easier, then you want to go to where it becomes easy, and then you want to go to where it becomes effortless.
Yeah, I like that. I like that thought. And I also like the way that you're talking about working backwards. I hate to say this, but like some of the trainings that we get at NFL media, like some of those things, like I hate to admit, and hopefully it's just us listening. Sometimes I like to take the quiz before I fully take the thing, because if I get 8 out of 10 right, then I just need to know the 2 that I got wrong, and then I'm gonna go back and look at those chapters. So I tend to
I'm not telling anybody.
I tend to just kind of, if I can just fast forward and get to the quiz, let's get to what I don't know already. And then I'll work on those things so I don't have to whatever. So I want to fail fast so I can go back and get to it.
All right. Since we're in a confessional booth and none of our listeners are going to tell on us. So the way they set these, and I'm sure everybody that's listening that's in a company, they have these same type of training videos you have to watch, right? Well, they design it so like I remember doing one of them and I'm like, okay, let me open up another window. I can get some work done. I kind of listen to this. So, but if you open up another window on your computer, it stops. Yes. They've designed this thing so that you can't get distracted. So I'm like, all right, I can't do that. Well, then you know what I figured out? I'm like, shoot, I got 2 computers, man. So I put the training video on this computer, and I'm working away on the other, and it's kind of getting in here, and it's getting in here, and then you kind of go back to your test taking tricks, where you're like, now this sure looks like all the above.
Yes. So that's the thing. It is about failing fast. And I think if this is an organizational decision and we're talking about quarterbacks, I think there is something to, you have to let them play through their mistakes. Mm-hmm. And it was one of the issues that we had last year with the Miami Dolphins and Tua Tagovailoa. If you're going to put him in, I don't want to see him yo-yo in and out of the lineup. Let him play through those things, because he'll never know how to work through it if you never let him face the tough stuff. Yeah. Because you got to get through the tough stuff to get to the good stuff. And so when he does that, when you have a young quarterback, you have to make a commitment that, hey, there are going to be some ups and downs, but we're going to live through this, and he's going to come through it, provided that the quarterback is wired the right way and his failures don't completely erode his confidence.
So let me just lobby again one more time for playing time for these guys. So if we look at these situations, do you think, and I think they've already said Fields is starting, so he's starting this game. But here's a reason for that, right? In a 4-quarter preseason game, do you think there is the potential for a situation to arise that Andy Dalton has not already been in or seen during his time in the NFL?
Probably
no.
not.
There is a 100% chance if you let Justin Fields go out there for a full game, he's going to encounter dozen plus different situations that he's never had to deal with before. And maybe he makes mistakes on 6 to 8 of those. That's great. Now we can check that one off check that box, and we can go learn from that. I would say the same from Trey Lance. Jimmy Garoppolo's played a good amount of football in the NFL. So I don't need to see him in a preseason game at this point in time. Let's give Trey Lance a chance to get these 12, 20, 30 different experiences that he has yet to have. And let's let him learn from that in a game, which, by the way, I don't know if you know this, doesn't count against your record. So why not let them get out there and experience those things?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, DJ. You never get experience until you go through certain situations for the first time. And if you have a great teacher on the sideline, whatever the position coach is or whatever, he can walk you through those things. But a lot of times, and I would say this, the best coaches to me, particularly in practice, and I know how you felt about this playing quarterback, were the ones who didn't say anything before or during a play.
Yeah, let's let it go.
They let the play go, and then they corrected you out. But the ones that always bothered me was, I'm out there playing corner, and they're like, hey, move inside, back up, here comes this. You never develop instincts if someone is always kind of coaching you through. So my advice is always let them play, then correct them after the play. And then if you want to repeat it. But I want them to develop their natural instincts for playing the game and playing the position.
This episode is brought to you by HP Plus. In a world full of smart devices, shouldn't your printer be smart too? It is with HP Plus. These printers know when they're running low, so you always get the ink you need delivered right when you need it. Plus, you save up to 50% on ink, so you can print whatever you want, as much as you want, anytime you want. Huh, that is pretty smart. Get 6 free months of instant ink when you choose HP Plus. Conditions apply. Visit hp.com/smart for details.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's starting with the woots. And now a speech.
I just want to say that friendship is about heart and brain. Who's with me?
Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
And my brain is saying, when it's time to go home, somebody call me a ride.
Love that guy.
Me too.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Yeah, well, trust me. Every quarterback has dealt with the got him. And you're like,
I don't see it.
Just let me work through my progression, okay? I know you're coaching running backs. He's my 5th option on this play, okay? Let me just get through my progression. Oh, it drives you crazy.
It is, but and it's one of those things that with young players and quarterbacks in particular, there are things that you have to let them experience. And I am actually all for letting young quarterbacks play longer, even if they're going to be starters. I think this week for Mac Jones, because eventually we have to talk about Mac Jones being given more opportunities to play, working with
Let's jump into it.
Yeah, the joint practices, and by all accounts, the things that you're hearing from his teammates, to me, are telling in terms of guys talking about how he has control of the offense. He has a great feel for what is going on. It doesn't look like it's too big for him. And we can say practice is practice, but as you and I both know, having been around joint practices are about as intense as a preseason game because you're finally seeing different competition.
Maybe more so.
Everybody's competing and going after it. It's fast. It gives you a really good gauge on where somebody is. To hear that Mac Jones completed him at one point, and I don't know if it was 101 or 707, 18 straight completions. DJ, that's what we talk about. When we had Joe Montana on the podcast, and he talked about those days in practice in San Francisco and how they talked about the ball doesn't hit the ground. That is when you're beginning to operate at a championship level, when the ball doesn't hit the ground. To me, that is very telling and revealing about Mac Jones, even though you and I both have some reservations about maybe his talent. In New England, he might be the right fit because of how they want to play they want the position to be played and how they want to play on offense.
All right, I'm going back to something that we've talked about on here before. But when I pulled up that document from Bill Belichick from the early 90s with the Cleveland Browns, and he was talking about what he looks for in certain positions. Again, this is, 30 years ago?
Yeah.
So here's what Bill Belichick said he wanted in a quarterback 30 years ago. Number one is to make good decisions. Mm-hmm. Then arm size, physicality, toughness, leadership, guys look up to and have confidence in, which speaks to what you were talking about. A real competitor. Accurate rather than a guy with a cannon. Emphasis on our game will be on decision making, timing, and accuracy. Let me see what else to say here. Needs to be confident. Intelligence is important, but not as much as field awareness and judgment. Can't be sloppy fundamentally. Unsound guy with ball handling, technique, etc. Footwork, drops, release, etc. QB has to be able to throw the ball with accuracy.
I mean,
if you were in a court of law, would that be your closing argument if you're Mac Jones?
I mean, if you were to go back and look at the bottom of the reports, your report and my report, when we talk about Mac Jones, all of the things that are in the positive column would all steer towards intelligence, decision-making, accuracy, touch, and timing. The things that were not as big for him or weren't the strong points of the game was arm talent in terms of big arm, athleticism, and those things. But when Coach Belichick talks about fundamentally sound, being on it, instincts and awareness and decision-making, I mean, Mac Jones checks off all the boxes in that category. And what I had said and what we had talked about is when you're Cam Newton and your game is not necessarily like that, your game is more built on power, strength of personality, athleticism, and the ability to just be a unicorn at the position. When you open the door, you allow the team to find a player that is very comfortable for them because that's their preferred way of playing. And, we all have preferences when it comes to things. And when you let people put on those comfortable loafers, sometimes they find, I know these penny loafers are a little old, but they might work for me. I think I still can wear these. Yeah. And I think that's what you may be getting in New England. He is a comfortable set of loafers for the Patriots because they had a similar player. Not saying he's Tom Brady, but they had a similar player for 20 years. And that's what everyone around the building is very familiar with because they won at a high level with someone that was like that.
Okay, so I just read you what Bill Belichick wanted in the 90s. You mentioned our reports. I just pulled up mine here. So tell me the crossover and we can look at it directly. Okay. Average size and athleticism for the quarterback position, operates out of the shotgun and pistol, showing incredible accuracy, efficiency, and poise. He's a high effort thrower with slightly above average arm strength at his best on touch throws where he can anticipate, place the ball on the proper shoulder of his target, shows toughness to hang in versus pressure, although he rarely faced it with an elite offensive line. Isn't much of a threat as a runner. He lacks the twitch to consistently escape and buy extra time. Jones should become a starting NFL quarterback, but his lack of twitch and athleticism will limit the playbook with the way the game is trending. So his negatives were on things that Bill Belichick didn't really care about back then. His positives are what he emphasized. And this is 30 years later. Now, you can say maybe Bill Belichick's changed and evolved a little bit. Bill Belichick's got a fingers full of rings from playing with a certain style of quarterback.
Yeah, and DJ, and here's what we always say is tricky for us and what we're doing as scouts on the outside for a team. We're evaluating players, but we're evaluating them with maybe 32 teams in mind. When you work for a team, you have a certain list of criteria that you're looking for because it's fit for your team. And so that is why we've always said that the draft boards around the league are like snowflakes. Every draft board is different based on what you prefer, what you want, what is very, very coveted, what are viewed as premium traits in a player. And as you match your report up with what Belichick had said 30 years ago, you can see why Mac Jones was a target and why they took him. And now even more than ever, you can see why there may be this desire to play him, even though he's young and he may not have some of the talent that Cam Newton has. He might be a better fit.
Yeah. Accuracy, decision-making, toughness. I mean, that's what Bill Belichick is valued at that position. And those are, I mean, look, toughness is a wash. Cam Newton's incredibly tough.
Yeah.
But if we're just looking at accuracy, decision-making, I'd give Mac Jones the edge in both categories.
Yeah, I mean, accuracy as a thrower, for sure, he is there. And then when it comes to decision-making and judgment, like it also includes some of the other stuff that you brought in there, because Belichick, you heard him talk about not as much about intelligence, but he talked about instincts.
Yes.
Well, to me, instincts are part of anticipation and timing.
Mm-hmm.
No one teaches you that. I feel like that's something that you just have. Like when we're playing, it's almost like trying to skip a rock and hit a boat, right? A motorboat that's going. You have to just kind of have a feel for when I let it go.
I don't know what you did as a kid, man, but that'll get you in big trouble.
You know, you have to have a little level of anticipation to be able to let it go when you want to pick it off.
I'm pretty sure you just confessed to a felony. I'm pretty sure is what just happened right here on the podcast.
I might have skipped a rock or two. That's all.
All right, let's get to a couple of these other quarterback situations before we get to a trade that fascinated me. Let's start first of all. Teddy named the starter, and let me just. I won't lead the witness here. Your thoughts?
Not surprised, and the reason why I'm not surprised is look at the head coach and the head coach's background. Typically, when you have a coach that is a defensive coach, a defensive-oriented coach, the number one thing they ask from the quarterback is don't mess it up. Mm-hmm. Meaning the number one deciding factor in football is the turnover battle. And so if your quarterback doesn't give the ball away from a defensive standpoint, you feel like you can play with that guy because you feel like I can build a defense to manage the game. And if I have a game manager, I can be effective. Teddy Bridgewater is a lot of things. Is not a lot of things in terms of being like a high-level thrower. He's going to put it on the back or whatever. But typically what he does do is he takes good decisions. He understands how to play winning football. And when you surround him with an environment where he just has to be a part of the machine, not the entire machine, he can function. Case in point, how he succeeded in Minnesota when they had the running game and the defense with Zimmer, how he succeeded in New Orleans when he filled in for Drew Brees and they just had him manage the game. That is when he is at his best, and that is why I thought Vic Fangio would always select him over Drew Lock, because Drew Lock is a bit of a wild card as he plays the position.
All right, I have to go. I don't have it in front of me right now, but Vic, I believe, was the defensive coordinator with the 49ers when Alex Smith was there. Correct?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm pretty
Teddy
sure.
Teddy Bridgewater is Alex Smith. They're the same guy.
Oh yeah, yeah,
same exact guy. So
Iceman.
Yeah,
don't
and I know Colin came in there and they had a lot of success with Colin, but that's, as a defensive coach, you hit the nail on the head. Don't screw it up. Don't mess it up. Protect the football. I get all that, why he went with him. I thought while that, was probably the way it was always going to go, I kind of go with the 2-for-1 theory on some of these quarterback jobs. We'll get to New Orleans in just a second. But I felt like with a young quarterback, with more tools, quite honestly, with more ability, yes. Drew Lock does, and was playing pretty good. I thought you could go with Drew Lock with a short leash because that's a ceiling play, right? We're going to try and have the most upside we can with all these weapons that we have. And then if Drew Lock struggles at all early, boom, we go from him to Teddy. Teddy's not going to be in a bad mental place if he's not starting. He's a veteran. He's been around numerous teams. He's been a starter. He's been a backup. For him to then come off the bench and take it over and go with it, no big deal. That's an unknown with Drew Lock. We don't know how Drew Lock, and I thought he handled himself very well at the press conference the other day. It showed a lot of maturity, but you still don't know. I mean, how deflated you're going to get losing that job. Can he be ready at a moment's notice if Teddy were to get hurt, or if Teddy, for some reason, didn't play well 4 or 5 games in? I like the idea. In other words, I like the idea of Teddy coming out of the bullpen better than I like the idea of Drew Lock coming out of the bullpen.
I think the thing that clouds the situation is this. Vic Fangio takes over, and George Patton is now the new czar in Denver. And even though their relationship to this point has been pretty good, he's still not necessarily George Patton's guy. And so when you are Vic Fangio and you know that, hey, I need to win some games, what is the quickest way for me to hit the ground running? Let me start the veteran quarterback
who, by the way, happens to be the GM's guy.
I mean, that is also a nice coincidence. But like, let me start the quarterback who's going to give me the best chance to not mess it up out the gate and give my team the best opportunity to win games to see if we can compete in the AFC West.
Yeah, and it's a lesson I think that a lot of quarterbacks have learned over the years. We always talked about in the draft room, you'd be in there and you'd be talking about a player, and we always say, look, every player needs a sponsor. You got to have a sponsor in the room. Like who is your guy? Who's going to go to bat for you? And it's just kind of the way it works. But when the guys who drafted you are no longer there, Ty doesn't go to the runner anymore. You're not the runner anymore. You know what I mean? Like, you got to be significantly better than the other guy to win the job.
That really matters. Everybody needs an advocate. And at the end of the day, when we're having these meetings amongst decision makers, that voice, that sway matters. And if you're Vic Fangio, you certainly have to sit at the poker table and be able to read the room. And if the room is leaning towards Teddy Bridgewater, sometimes you do that. But I really believe it's more so the ability to be a caretaker of the offense, more so than a high-risk, high-reward player, probably factored more into the situation than the connections with George Patton.
I think this Denver Broncos team, it provided Teddy, can score enough points, which he should with all the weapons they have around him, and improved offensive line over the last couple of years. You add Javonte Williams into that backfield, who we both love. You get Jerry Jeudy year 2, Cortland Sutton's come. I mean, they got a lot of dudes, man. And then you look on the defensive side of the ball, they can really rush the quarterback. I think they've got a star in Patrick Surtain. I mean, they've got pieces, man, to be a playoff team right now.
Oh, they got a really good team. They have a really good team on paper. And Mike Munchak hasn't got enough credit for the job he's doing.
He's phenomenal.
He's done it up front. Javonte Williams may give announcers an opportunity to really talk about the job that he's done, because he's absolutely fortified that front line. And some of the issues that the Steelers had been dealing with the last couple of years with their offensive line is
not
really
a coincidence.
Mike Munchak's departure.
Okay, let's get to one other quarterback situation before we get to this trade. Thoughts on New Orleans? We saw the game the other night. We didn't talk about this on the pod the other day. We teased we'd hit it today. So just what do you think goes on there?
In my mind, I think this is easy, and you and I have talked about this. If you name Jameis Winston the starting quarterback, you still get the Taysom Hill factor. If you name Taysom Hill the starting quarterback, you lose that added dimension. To me, it is very simple. Jameis Winston is the starter. I still mix in Taysom Hill. I'm still able to do a bunch of different things with Taysom Hill, not only as a Wildcat quarterback, but as the Swiss Army knife playing tight end, H-back, fullback. I like that scenario better than Taysom Hill playing at quarterback. And truth be told, I think Jameis Winston is a better quarterback than Taysom Hill. I believe his experience, I think he has over 2,000 pass attempts. Taysom Hill has less than 200. I think all of that matters. And if you really, I don't want to say you dismiss the last year in Tampa, because the 30 for 30 thing is real, but also understand he had never had more than 20 interceptions in a year prior to playing that 1 year in Bruce Arians' system. And Bruce Arians' system also led to an uptick in interceptions for Tom Brady. So some of it is Jameis Winston being the decision maker that he is, kind of like that borderline decision maker. But some of it also was the scheme where they really pushed the ball down the field, and no risk it, no biscuit is the mentality. I believe Jameis would do a much better job of being more efficient and effective in Sean Payton's offense, as we've seen in the preseason.
So this is something somebody mentioned to me the other day, and I didn't maybe I've just missed it. I haven't seen people talk about this publicly, but I just looked it up, and there's articles about it from the beginning of camp. But did you notice that Taysom Hill had lost a bunch of weight?
No.
So he wanted to really go for this quarterback job, and he thought one of the things he really needed to do was to change his body. So he leaned out. He lost weight. His quote here is, "Yeah, I leaned out, came in a little bit lighter than I would normally come into camp. And then my weight room routine through the offseason was quite a bit different as well. So not as much from a lower body standpoint, but everything upper body, backside, shoulder was a bigger emphasis and so forth." So we've been talking, and we've said we're singing the same song, right? You start Jameis and you get Taysom, and we're going to get the same Taysom we've seen over the last several years: speed, toughness, breaking tackles. And I'm sitting here going, well, hold up. If he's lost a significant amount of weight and he hasn't been working in his lower half, you're not going to get the same Taysom in that role that you've got otherwise.
No, you won't. And DJ, like in working out, for him, to go back to being the old Taysom, it would take 8 weeks at a minimum to build that back. And he would have to do it in season, which makes it even harder because of all the running that you're doing in practice and those things. I don't really understand, like, did Taysom do this with consultation of the Saints staff?
I'm sure they told him you're competing. You've got a year in. You're competing for this job. You got a chance. So you're sitting there. If you're Taysom Hill, you're going, okay, well, I get one shot to try and be a starting quarterback in the NFL. I'm gonna do a little less squatting, and I'm gonna get the bands out, and I'm gonna limber up a little bit, and see if that can help me with accuracy and throwing the football where you want to throw it.
I mean, so he has all the pliability and all the things that we talk about with the bands. So he's now become a pitcher, not a position player.
Just think about it. Think about it. You've seen the way quarterbacks train versus the way a H-back would train. That's a different deal.
The other thing I worry about is this now, DJ. Has his mentality changed? Because that toughness thing is part of his mentality. So now if you ask him, all right, here we go, we're going to put you back in the slot. We're going to have you run up inside. Does he have that in him anymore?
Yeah.
Does he have that? Ooh, it's a little noisy.
Well, think about the first time that Jameis has a 3 turnover game. And then all of a sudden you're in the game going like, wait a second, I'm running out of bounds. I'm not going to take this punishment. I could be playing quarterback next week. Like there's a lot more there than I think people are talking about.
Yeah. It's great that you brought it up because I never really thought of it like that. But yeah, is he going to be the same reckless, fearless player that we fell in love with as a Swiss Army knife? Or is he in his mind always QB1?
Yeah.
Because if he's always QB1, he's going to make decisions based on that.
It's easier when you got Drew Brees there and say, I'm going to embrace this new role. He ain't going anywhere, so I better find a way to make this team and contribute. And now he might be sitting there saying, I'm practicing next to this dude every day. Like I'm better than him. I don't know.
Right.
That's how competitors think.
That's how every competitor thinks. So yeah, I'm sure there's some of that. Like I can't believe they didn't give him the starting quarterback, and here I am out here catching passes and I'm blocking. It changes. It can change.
It's not as simple as I've done the same thing that we make it out to be.
Yeah, you can't flip the switch. It's a very difficult thing. I haven't thought of it from a mental standpoint, but that's a great observation by you. And great information and insight, those people that have noticed how he's leaned out. Because I'll be honest with you, DJ, I hadn't really paid close attention to his body when I got a chance to watch him. But that's a significant thing because remember, he was the thick, rugged, muscular, muscle-bound guy. And for someone as a scout, when we dig back, okay, this is great. You did all this pliability. But let's remember, when you played quarterback extensively at BYU, you were hurt each and every year. So he's avoided injuries being the Swiss Army knife because he's bulked up and been a certain way. Is this also going to change his durability? I want to know. It's been a couple weeks, Buck. Can we get that in the notebook? Can we squeeze that in the notebook? I'm trying to give you one idea a month. One idea a month. We might be able to squeeze that in there. I got your lineman in there last week when we talked about the size of the Baltimore Ravens. I put that in there. Not a baby. The Taysom Hill thing, that is a very interesting thing. The thing that we have in the notebook, I think I'll change a little bit. Tyrann Mathieu quickly came out and talked about analytics, and he said that every player should be utilizing analytics. And of course, Nerd Nation went crazy and said, like this is what we should do, this and that. I would think that you can speak on this too, having worked for the Ravens and those things. I believe analytics have always been in the pre-game preparation process. When I was playing back in the 90s, Gunther Cunningham was the defense coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs. DJ, we used to get the scouting report, and in the scouting report, it was a quarterback heat map where he personally had dotted up where the ball goes. And so it was kind of like those charts where you see like the densely compacted things where, hey, the ball goes to the right at 10 yards. The ball is in the middle right around here and there. So I feel like we've always been exposed to analytics, but maybe it was under the guise of a different name. We would call it, hey, his tendencies. This is what they look for. Let's scout or whatever. But Tyrann Mathieu shed light on analytics and encouraged more players to utilize it. In your experiences working in front office, how much was it utilized when you were around the building in the pregame preparation process? Yeah, I mean, you had tendencies for everything, every down and distance, every player. I mean, that stuff has been around. I think, to me,
the advancement has been with the GPS and
stuff.
the analytics stuff.
Yes.
And even like you talked about the heat map. So there's the heat maps for quarterbacks have been around forever. And I'm really trying to learn more and more about the next gen stats to go along with, some of this GPS stuff. So on my training camp tour, I was asking a lot of people about how they use it, what different things they use. And I had never heard of this before, but I thought, oh, that makes all the sense in the world. The defensive lines and defensive coordinators have heat maps on an offensive line. So you can say, look at all their pressures for the year, and the majority of their pressures are coming in the B gap between X and Y.
Oh,
so
nice.
On this side, this B gap, and then you can say, okay, well, this is where we're going to run our games. This is where we want to put our best pass rusher on third down, because this outside shoulder is where everything's coming on this particular player. So you look at across the board and you're like, okay, well, there's no action. Nobody's getting home over here. So we're going to run all our games. We're going to bring our stunts, our blitzes all from this other side.
That's great. That is next level, but it is the advancement of being able to break it down. When I was playing defensive back, DJ, like they used to have the young guys, and I was one of those guys, they would say, okay, I want you to take all of for the receivers, and I want you to chart every route that they run in a 4-game breakdown. And what happens, DJ, over time, you begin to notice they run the same routes. Mm-hmm. So then what you do is when you're playing, it's almost like playing baseball, right? Because I hear people talk about this. My son talks about it playing baseball. He says, look, when you go at the bat, you're not thinking about every pitch that they can throw. You're sitting on – we talked about it.
Yeah, one pitch, one location.
You're sitting on the fastball. And so it's the same thing when you're playing defensive back. As you do the study, a 4-game breakdown, if they only run slants, in-breaking routes or whatever, you're sitting inside. And as soon as that shoulder goes inside, you're jumping it. And that's when you make your plays. And so analytics allows you to play faster if you understand it and you can marry the analytics with the film work. So,
all right. Last thing here real quick. The Sony Michel to the Rams.
Love it. I love it in this factor. I didn't believe they had a high-level back behind Cam Akers. When Cam Akers went out, the guys they were playing behind, I didn't think they were good enough to attract the defense's attention to make them put an extra defender in the box and not put the focal point on number 9. Sony Michel may have issues that may prevent him from playing every game, but when he is on the field, you still have to account for him. And because he is a solid receiver out of the backfield and those things, he's not Cam Akers, but he can give you the ability to do some of the things that you were planning to do with Cam Akers, which will allow this offense to continue to be balanced.
And I keep looking at all these trades, and I keep looking at what the Rams could have done with picks versus the proven players that they receive. And it's something you've been beating that drum for a long time about the value of knowing it's clear packaging. I don't have to wonder what Sony Michel is. I know what Sony Michel is, and more than likely going to be much better than the 4th-round pick that you gave up for him.
And that's what they've done. And here's the thing on the counter. I just saw where the Patriots only have 3 homegrown players on their current roster.
Yeah.
DJ, that is unbelievably inept production in the draft. And so a lot of times we've celebrated the Patriots for, oh, man, look at them winning the draft because they accumulate picks. But eventually, you got to turn those picks into players. And right now, they haven't proven in recent history that they can turn draft picks into high-end players. That's problematic for the Patriots if you're trying to build a team, because it's hard to build a team through free agency.
Well, that's got to be just somewhat recently then, right? Because I'm looking at it. Isaiah Wynn was homegrown. Michael Owenu was homegrown. Shaq Mason was homegrown. Damian Harris was homegrown.
Yeah, recently.
So it must be in a period of time where they're talking about.
Yeah,
Dante Hightower.
Albert Breer put out there about just a handful of players are homegrown players, but the overwhelming majority of their roster are guys that were not drafted or their draft picks have just since departed. And I think that is – I just think that is such a major issue.
It has to kind of be over a recent period of time. They have a decent number. That's a decent number of guys darn near their whole offensive line. I mean, Trent Brown went away and came back. Well, he wasn't a homegrown though. He was a San Francisco pick. So, but no, it is a team that is not afraid to part with high picks for lower picks either. It never looks good. You get away with it when you're Bill Belichick, but it just never looks good when you're trading players that you took in the 1st round for 4th round picks. But
okay, so now the Patriots now have 5 homegrown first-round picks left on their roster: Devin McCourty, Dante Hightower, N'Keal Harry, Isaiah Wynn, and Mac Jones. So that's just 3 from the last 9 classes in terms of the first-round picks.
First-round guys. There you go. That
first-round guys. So when you think about that, like we always talk about first-round picks, you got to nail your first and second rounders. But your first rounders for sure have to be guys that are the foundation of your team. So only have 3 out of your last 9. That'd be good in baseball. Not quite so great when it comes to the draft.
No doubt. All right. I want to encourage everybody to listen to the Hard Knocks podcast. That drops each Tuesday after Hard Knocks runs. It's hosted by our buddy Peter Schrager. You can find it wherever you get your podcast. So check out the Hard Knocks podcast. Anything else you want to add before we get out of here today, Buck?
No, that's it. It's all good, man. Can't wait to see what happens, go through this last thing, get to these final cuts, and then talk about it.
Well, there we go. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. Thank you guys for rolling with us today. We'll catch you next time right here on Move the Sticks.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's starting with the woots. Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.